In a world filled with information, where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest-running financial talk show in Arkansas, and let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
You probably heard this saying, everything in moderation. Certainly anything in excess can cause problems, and in your finances, it can be a disaster. On today's show, 3 financial mistakes to cancel from your culture.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
And we welcome you in on this final day of March 2021 for the Get Ready for the Future show as we record on this Wednesday morning. My name is Scott Inman, along with John Shrewsbury and Janet Walker. The gang is all back together around the Oval Table again.
In the same room.
Who is a stranger in our room here, Janet?
I don't know, but I'm glad he's back.
Maybe it doesn't feel normal then. I thought it felt more normal.
No, it does feel a lot better. It's been almost a year that you were banished to the back room back there, and we were trying to do a little social distancing to at least be a good example to folks.
Yep.
And now the governor has said, the mask mandate is off, and we're all pretty healthy around here, so we're going to be back together, and I love it.
In many cases, the virus has already run through our system. I had it way back in August, so we've definitely been through all of that. But we are looking forward to a little more normalcy, I think, all across the board in the next 3 quarters of 2021. So I can't help but think, we promoted on social media for our show today, and it was in all capital letters, canceled. And the thought crossed my mind.
I know.
Is the show canceled? Are we doing the show today? No, we're not canceled. So don't worry about that. The Get Ready for the Future show is moving on, right?
Yes,
but
absolutely.
The canceled comes from, as we mentioned in the open, 3 financial mistakes to cancel from your culture. And we use the word culture because we're going to kind of bring in the tie-in here of the culture in general, because these are financial mistakes that I think they happen on a big level and they happen on a personal level. And it all kind of comes back on this play on the term of the year, I guess, or the last couple of years, is the cancel culture, right? This idea that if you don't like something, we are so quick to dismiss it. And we're not going to get into the politics of all of that, but it is a very strange phenomenon in the sense that we know very little about the full story, when many times we're really quick to hit the cancel button and not deal with it anymore.
Yeah, we tend to react pretty harshly as a culture, if you will, in this cancel culture phraseology here. That I don't think that that's always a wise thing to do, but what we're going to do today is talk about some things that would be wise to cancel in your personal culture. We'll talk about, what they look like on a national level, and then what does it look like for you personally, and there are some things that you should cancel.
I think it's interesting to note that oftentimes people get involved in the canceling of something that has really no direct effect on them. They just state an opinion and go, just cancel that or what have you. But if we got worked up over things like debt and bad financial issues and things of that nature, as much as we got worked up over politics or pop culture or whatever the case may be, we'd be a whole lot healthier in terms of our finances if we did get really pretty dadgum angry about some of the things that happen to us from a financial standpoint that we really ought to just go ahead and cancel.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of people, I think, when they do make decisions that would fall under this header, if you will, of cancel culture, it is decisions about their money, right? It's a business they no longer want to use because they said something they don't like. Well, this is money relation as well, or relationship with your money. These things we're going to be talking about today, and if you can cancel them, I think they'd make a bigger impact than maybe whether you're going to go to a certain company or not.
There is a direct benefit to canceling some of the things that we're going to talk about today, whereas the benefit may be more, I guess, emotional, if you will, in terms of cancel culture. But one of the things that I think that we can jump into, Scott, is really thinking about this from being bad for the economy, but also bad for your economy. you got to think about your economy. We always have talked about your economy. It doesn't really matter what's happening in the big picture of the economy if your economy sucks. You just don't want that to be going on. We can have a robust economy happening, and we do right now. But frankly, there are some folks that are really struggling. And one of the reasons that they're struggling is because they engaged in over borrowing in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that is an area that a lot of people could really take a serious look at and decide that they're going to make some changes.
Yeah.
If you want to think about over borrowing and just kind of where we are as a society, if we look back at 2020 to see what happened in terms of debt held by the public increased by 4,000. I'm sorry, that's a different number than I thought I was reading there. I thought they were going the individual route. This is $4.2 billion, the largest annual dollar increase in history. And March is, by the way, Credit Awareness Month. So as we close out the month of March, it would be good for you to maybe consider where you are personally. So where I was going, as I was literally just misreading that, where I was going was the personal number. How much has your personal debt increased in the last year? Where are you compared to 12 months ago? Are you borrowing more? And I will say, like, we're in the boat of having refinanced our home. And so for some of you, you may have added closing cost in on that. But if it ultimately puts you in a better position, long term, that's a different conversation. But if you're looking at credit card debt that is maybe, out of hand or maybe higher than what it was last year, if it's not something that you're paying off every month, then that's not where we need to be as individuals.
Scott, I sit on the Gen Wealth investment team along with Tim Key and Charlie Skinner, and one of the things that we talk about on a fairly regular basis is the explosion of public debt, meaning not in terms of like the government debt, but in terms of debt issued by publicly traded companies. There's way more debt out there on publicly traded companies than there has been ever before. And a lot of that debt is what they call triple B rated debt. Now, it's just barely investment grade, but it is investment grade. And so there is some concern among our discussions about how much debt is being taken on by companies and whether they're going to be able to handle that if we have a prolonged, protracted recession. And so over borrowing is a problem not only in your personal finances, but also in the finances of corporate America. And this leads to things like the financial crisis that we had in 2008.
Right.
And that's a big concern. When you're looking at investments, you always want to take a look and say, okay, how much debt does that particular company have, and are they able to handle that debt?
You have to take a look, I think, too, at the source of that over borrowing. I do think it's important to point out that 2020 was an unusual year.
Yeah,
I do think
sure.
A lot of people may have incurred new debt, maybe even credit card debt, just trying to buy groceries because they lost their job or they were furloughed from their job, and that's a different thing. But it's a great time now, if you're getting back to normal, to attack that. But when you talk about debt from a culture standpoint, we started using the word cancel culture and the need to cancel over borrowing from your personal culture. But if you expand that and think about how prevalent it is in today's society, I think from all the client meetings that I've had, it's pretty regularly assumed that most of the clients think they're going to always have an auto payment. They're always going to have a loan payment for a car, that's how they buy vehicles. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of them buy with cash too, but even in retirement, the idea when we start talking about income and what do you need for retirement income, they are quick to want to build a car payment into that income because they think they're going to have to buy it that way.
Well, and car payments, student loan debt,
Yeah.
that's another huge one. Right now, my son is in the midst of filling out, just one scholarship application after another. You got kids
I'm
doing
there.
that too. It's that time of year. And one of them asked him, what do you expect to do to handle your student loan debt after you graduate? As though it is an absolute that he will have student loan debt when he graduated.
Right.
And my son brought me the question and he went, Mom, I'm not going to have student loan debt. Like, what do I tell them? Because they're assuming I will. And I said, well, you need to tell them why you won't. And so that's how he handled the conversation. But you think about that as a culture that it is an assumption that you'll have a car payment. It is an assumption that you'll have a student loan. It is an assumption that you'll have a mortgage, frankly, for the rest of your life. That's the way most people look at it. you don't have to fall into those assumptions. You can cancel over borrowing.
Well, and I think that there is a place for debt. And oftentimes, if you have money and you have debt, you think, I ought to take this money and pay off that debt. We deal with this with people with their retirement accounts when they basically come out of employment for the last time. One of the itches is to pay off their home mortgage or pay off the truck or pay off the car or whatever the case may be. Oftentimes, we counsel people to continue making those debt payments as opposed to lump sum pay something off. The reason that we do that is the tax impact of taking that money out of a qualified plan, paying taxes on it, and then paying it off is tremendous. And you really don't want to have to pay that much in taxes. It could throw you into another tax bracket, but that is a regular knee-jerk reaction that people have to debt. I think you have to be able to accurately and very effectively manage your debt. So here's the deal. If you had, let's say, $50,000 left to pay on your house, and you have a choice of paying a $500 a month mortgage payment in retirement or taking $50,000 out of your retirement account to pay that mortgage payment, then the move would be to keep paying that monthly payment, because you could always, if things really got bad, you could always reach over in your retirement account and pay it off if you had to, but you don't have to, so you don't do it for tax reasons.
Our Conway team worked on a case recently where the clients just kept coming back to, we want to pay off our house. Did we mention we want to pay off our house? By the way, we want to pay off our house. And I understand that. But when they came in, I think this is important for people to understand, when they came in, it was, do we pay off the house, yes or no? And that was like, there was no in between, like, do we accelerate the payoff or anything like that? And what we discovered as we put together their plan is there is a way in their case for them to pay it off much faster, but without taking, John, like you were talking about, that lump sum and destroying those retirement assets. And so it's not always black and white. That's one of the keys to understand here, that it's not just a do we do this or do we not. There's still a way to get out of that debt with planning, probably faster than what you would otherwise.
So many people think the value of a financial advisor is in investment advice.
Yes.
But I think Janet just highlighted a great value to an advisor. A good advisor is helping you avoid financial mistakes, which is what we're doing here today on the show. So the first one is over borrowing. Cancel over borrowing from your personal financial culture, if you will. You may have listened to the radio program for a long time and remembered the fastest 4 minutes in investing, because this is the time when that would be running on certain radio affiliates of the Get Ready for the Future show. I want to tell you a little bit about a change in that, because it was actually originated because of the need to have a radio format be different for one of our affiliates than it was for another. And that's no longer needed now. We have one less affiliate. So the fastest 4 minutes is not a requirement, but it's become kind of fun to do. It's become pretty popular on social media, so we don't want to quit it. So what we are doing is we're changing it. It's got a brand new look. It's not really the fastest 4 minutes in investing anymore. It's the fastest 4 minutes in finance. So we're going to broaden the scope of the topics we're going to talk about. We'll talk about investing still. We'll talk about the markets and the economy, which is what we've always done. But we also want to bring in retirement topics in there as well, because it's now going to be a standalone video that you can get in your email inbox. And moving forward, if you'd like to get that, you can text the word FAST to 501-381-5228. Again, that's 501-381-5228. Just text the word FAST and you'll be able to sign up and get that directly to your email inbox. They've kicked John off of the Fastest Four, and they're making me do it by myself.
Well, you got your own studio.
I got my own show.
You got your own show. You got your own studio. I hope you're happy, Mr. Broadcast.
John's going to retire real soon.
I technically didn't ask for any of it, but I'll take it. We'll do it. Yeah. So the email inbox is a great way to get it for the foreseeable future, and it's a short future. You will also be able to get it on social media. So there'll be some reminders on how to sign up for you if you don't do it today.
It's only going to be there for about a month and then going away. So be sure you text us.
This week we're talking, by the way, about the inflation rate, and does the bringing in of the new season of spring mean a spring bounce potentially in the stock market? So you'll want to check that out. Again, just text the word FAST to 501-381-5228. And I've got to get out for a commercial break pretty fast.
Yeah.
That's it for segment one. The Get Ready for the Future show continues as we talk about 3 financial mistakes this week to cancel from your culture. Back in a moment.
Hey, it's John and Janet from Gen Wealth Financial Advisors, and we are so excited and honored to be named Arkansas Money and Politics Best of the Best in 2020 in 2 categories. One as Best Financial Advisors, but secondly, Best Women-Owned Business.
Thank you so much for your vote of confidence in us. We know it's the Gen Wealth Financial Advisors name that showed up, but we also know that we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much for your support and for your vote of appreciation for Gen Wealth.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at Gen Wealth and harness the power of more.
From the Gen Wealth Radio Network studios, we're back with more of the Get Ready for the Future show.
Scott Inman, John Shrewsbury, and Janet Walker back on the Get Ready for the Future show today, talking about 3 financial mistakes that you should cancel from your culture. And they're all going to start with over. These 3 mistakes that you can make happen on a pretty big level, and they are part of LPL Financial's over index. In fact, they are recognized levels of when we get to these overages, if you will. When the economy overheats to this level and we do these things, it can be the end of a bull market.
Yes.
And it can be really detrimental to the macro economy. But we're talking about how to apply them to your personal economy. And the first one that we talked about in the last segment was over borrowing, whether it's credit card debt or it's an auto loan. And really it all comes back to, for me, and this is a personal take for me, it comes back to cash flow. It comes back to margin in your financial life, the inflow and outflow of your income, right? Your income comes in, and it's a pretty simple concept, but I think people understand it, but we rarely practice it, that your expenses reach a point where you don't have much margin. And from our standpoint, from the financial advisor world, that means it's going to have an impact on how much you can save, how much you can put back for retirement.
Pardon me. One of the things that I have seen happen from time to time in this is that people edge out on that margin and try to get as close to the edge as they possibly can. And what that precludes is that everything is going to go perfectly.
Yeah.
You're not going to have any kind of interruption in your income. You're not going to have any kind of healthcare issue. You're not going to have a family member come up and distract you from the pace that you're currently on. I got news for you. I lived long enough to know that things change, that nothing stays the same. And so you have to build in that margin so you don't run off the road, Janet. When you are going down that road, you've got a little bit of margin there to account for life changes.
You know, I think on a personal level, one of the things that we have seen so many times in talking with clients is just they're kind of detached, really, guys, from what that number might be. What are they spending month in and month out? And certainly when you include the annual things that they're not thinking about on a monthly basis, I think when we switched to having a checkbook where you had to write everything out, and if you were good about it, documenting, you know, what you had spent in your register, and you could see that money dwindling down. Now we swipe a debit card or maybe a credit card, but we swipe plastic all the time, and we don't have that mental register, if you will, of how much money is going out on a regular basis. And it's frankly very easy to spend more than your paycheck is on a regular basis. And most people, you know, they may not do it every pay period, but I guarantee you they do it, you know, from time to time. And you just have to be aware. I think that's one of the keys to canceling overspending on a personal basis.
Yeah, that was the announcement of our second financial mistake. We didn't make that, but it does bridge from overborrowing into overspending. The two are very much adhesively connected. But didn't mean to interrupt you, John,
No.
but you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that a real-time, real-world example of this right now is going on in Arkansas in the housing market. Now, nationwide, the housing market actually spiked in the last couple of months, that there were more new home sales and things of that nature. But you are really seeing almost a frothy real estate market in Arkansas right now. I actually went and looked at a house. My daughter wants to begin to do some real estate investing and things of that nature. So I went and actually looked at a house that we were interested in just off of the listing that was online. And this house was listed for, I don't know, it's like $160,000. Guys, it might have been worth $60,000.
Wow.
and this is not unusual right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Houses, I had a real estate agent tell me that a house in Conway actually sold sight unseen. It didn't even get on the market. The realtor told somebody it was about to be listed on the market, and they said, "I'll take it." And there's several things that are driving that. Number one is low interest rates. People have the ability to go and borrow money at a very low interest rate, and so if they're looking at rental property, that is a leverage that they can get in this current time. But the other thing that is apparently happening is that there's kind of an influx of people from the West Coast headed to the South, and some of those folks are landing in Arkansas, and it's driving prices up. Here's what that means to you: don't get over your skis on a real estate deal, because you can be in real trouble. I've had one of the most, I guess, most prevalent real estate agents in this market say to me, "Look, now is not the time to buy."
Right.
Now is, and this is a real estate agent who's in the business of selling houses, and they're like, "Look, things are really overpriced right now, and this is where you get into trouble. This is how you can get into trouble." And you think, "Oh, it'll all be okay because I'm going to get it at this low interest rate, and I'll have a renter in this house forever, and everything will be just fine." And it is until it isn't. And so you have to be very careful about that. And that is a symptom of I think, a bigger problem down the road.
I think we're thinking of the same real estate agent who also told me it is the hottest real estate market she's ever seen,
Yes,
by the way.
Yeah.
So it is a seller's market, but not a buyer's market. But you think about why, you mentioned the West Coast infusion. They can probably afford to overpay for a house in Arkansas because their house sold for a lot more. But if you think about why people may be doing it, because mortgage rates are lower and they think they're getting a deal.
Yes.
But if they're overspending for that house,
The deal just went away.
Yeah, the deal just went away. What you saved if you had to pay more than what the house is worth, and then you're potentially upside down in that house if you needed to sell it because of job loss or something happened that you did not expect, then you've lost all of the value in doing that.
You're absolutely right, Scott. And when you think about the long-term nature of that overspending, that's a problem. Now, you can go and overspend a little bit at the store and pull that back, and that's not such a big deal. House mortgage is a forever deal almost. It's a 25, 30-year time period that you're looking at there. And so that can be a real big problem. Now, you can also overspend in some big ticket purchases.
You can, for sure. This is one of the things we were talking about, just kind of gathering our thoughts together. Some of those big ticket purchases look different a little bit right now because of everything we've had going on in the last year. Just as an example, we've had y'all know I married a geek. I'm very happy to be married to a geek, but I'm not fully in that category. He understands things that I will never understand in life, and one of them is how to put together a computer. Like we buy laptops if we need a laptop, but for the desktop, for the home computer, my husband builds those. I don't understand it. He does. This is how we balance each other out. But anyway, he's been telling me for a while, hey, we need to replace our home computer. So we set aside the money for it, and I told him, okay, just go ahead and go do your thing. Here's the money for it. Go build it. Well, he told me a couple of weeks ago, he said, honey, it's going to be about a year before we are done with the computer. And I'm like, what do you mean it's going to be a year? Well, the parts that he needs are not available. So you think about, what that impacts. We've had coronavirus, the impact in China. We've had some significant challenges in Japan as well with the parts being made. And what is the impact? Now we're obviously looking on a business level rather than a personal level, but what is the impact to so many businesses in the technology realm, because they just don't have the parts that they need to supply the pieces that, whatever you're making, whether it's a computer, you name it, lots of things out there that are just kind of in the mud right now.
You see this show up in inventory of vehicles on car lots right now. There's so much in electronics in vehicles, and the semiconductor shortage, if you will, because of COVID and what have you, has inventories very low. Well, what does that mean to you? That means that your prices are going to be higher because there's a greater demand for that. This is the classic setup of inflation. We've been talking about the fact that inflation is coming. We've been talking for weeks and weeks here on the show about this is a classic setup of inflation, that we've got so much money, so much cheap money in the marketplace that is chasing too few goods. Our productivity is down. The availability of certain goods are down. So you're seeing higher prices. You have to be wary of overspending.
Do you guys remember what the car lots looked like in 2008? When we had the cash for clunkers deal?
Yes.
My mother-in-law, she happened to need to replace a vehicle during that time. It was a very unfortunate time to need to buy a new vehicle. But what happened then, John, you mentioned supply and demand. What happened is, because there were so many vehicles that got, just sent to the junkyard, and they were off the roads, well, then there was not the supply needed to meet the demand, and so prices went up, and you were paying more than the what should have been the real value of a vehicle at that point. And that's what we're talking about here, that we have the possibility of heading that direction even more so in the housing market right now, and potentially in vehicles, because of not being able to get the parts that they need for the electronics of all of it.
We talked about the culture aspect of this many times in the show, and when you think about overspending and relate it to consumer spending and how much of a part consumer spending is of our overall economy, we need to spend money for our economy to do well. There's no question about that. But when you bring that in on a personal level in your personal economy, that doesn't always resonate, that you need to spend just to spend because you want something, as we've already highlighted where prices are. Now, certain things you're going to need, but we're not talking about things you have to have. We're talking about maybe a vehicle. I mean, if you just don't have one and it's broken and you have to do it. But how do you determine if you're overspending or not? Well, it's setting aside, again, goes back to that cash flow, that margin, having a budget, and knowing how much you can spend on something set aside for savings, and not being willing to overpay just to get it. Sometimes it means you have to wait.
I've got one more for you, Scott, and this is actually for our viewers as opposed to our listeners, but I'm showing a graph of what has happened to lumber.
Is that a graph?
That is a graph.
That's a graph.
It's kind of a
that's
graph.
A line.
That's a line. That's what lumber prices have done lately.
Okay. What are the numbers?
Well, I just did it on the fly.
On the fly.
Here.
Come on. Play along, Scott.
I got you.
So, but this is what I know. If you had gone to your local lumber store, you name it, whichever one, Lowe's, Home Depot, Independent Guy, whatever the case may be, and you were in the market for a 2x4. About a year ago, a 2x4 cost you about $2.83. Today, it costs you $9. Wow. And so that has been an explosion of a commodity. Commodity prices are going up like crazy. And so, again, you have to be wary of the timing of a purchase when it comes to what the prices are. Just because you have the money doesn't necessarily mean it's a great time to buy.
Hey, we're up against a break, but I think it's another great point that we may need to play out on the other side of the break, that this is a great application for people entering retirement, too.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people think, hey, I'm just going to take Social Security, going to live on a pension and never get a raise or not get much of a raise. But when things start to cost more, it highlights the importance of a retirement income plan that's going to have raises built in over time so that you can cover that increase in expenses. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
At GenWealth, one of our standards is that we value good communication. One of my favorite quotes about good communication is from George Bernard Shaw. He said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. If you ever doubt that, come to my house, listen to my 16-year-old son and my 13-year-old daughter having a conversation, and see what happens, because they will walk away with completely different understandings of the conversation that has occurred." It happens every time. It's okay, they're still learning communication. But here at GenWealth, We believe that that's something you need to experience every time you walk in our door, that you need to feel understood, that you need to feel listened to. So you'll see a change in how we're even communicating. If you're talking about something that's very serious, very personal, you'll even hear a change in our tone of voice, because that's just how good communication is supposed to be. But it also means that we can feed back to you what you've shared with us, just so you know that we're listening. We value good communication.
Education-driven, strategy-based, team-delivered. That's how we roll on the Get Ready for the Future show, and we're back for more.
Talking about 3 financial mistakes that you need to cancel from your culture, and they are a big problem in our culture, in the macro economy, but in your personal economy, you've got to get rid of them to be able to move towards your financial goals. And the first 2 are out of the barn now. We talked about over-borrowing in the first segment and overspending. They go hand in hand. Our last one is going to be overconfidence. Before we get fully into that, I do want to back up. We didn't really get to vet out that full thought before the end of our last segment when it comes to prices and determining whether you can afford something in the housing market, in the lumber market. You may have to wait, but as prices go up, and you're going into retirement, do you have a retirement income plan that has inflationary raises built in? You wouldn't work at a job for 30 years without getting a raise on your paycheck. Well, you're replacing a paycheck in retirement, so you need to get raises to your monthly income. And a retirement income plan from GenWealth does that. We do have a quick offering for you as well. If you want to kind of get an idea of, are you on track for your retirement goals, let me give you a free checkup. You can text the word checkup to 501-381-5228. Again, the number for you, 501-381-5228. Just text the word checkup and get to the 15-minute retirement. You can also visit the website, 15minuteretirement.com. That is the number 15minuteretirement.com spelled out. And you can get just a quick overview of where are you in relation to your retirement goals. And that's really all these overages. They play out in retirement as well, but they also play out in pre-retirement.
Scott, you were talking about the issue of retiring on a flat paycheck, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have retirement income increases, then you're going to run into a problem. And people that do that calculation, they sit down and they go, okay, well, I'm spending this and I can get pension and Social Security and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm in good shape. That is an example of overconfidence, because because you can cover it now doesn't mean you can cover it in 5 years or maybe even 3 years. Here's the problem that we run into right now economically. If you think about where we've been over the last 20 years in this country, we have seen almost no inflation. It just has not been a factor. I can almost assure you that inflation will be a factor going forward. COVID changed the game. COVID changed a lot of things structurally in our economy, and one of those is the fact that the government has spent a lot of money and intends apparently to continue spending trillions of dollars. I think there is a bill being floated now by the Biden administration to put $2 trillion into infrastructure. Well, again, this is money coming into the economy that isn't actually being manufactured. It's being printed.
Yeah. And
so then it's going to be chasing goods, and those goods prices are going to go up. And that is going to have an effect on you in your future years as retirees. I can tell you, as someone who has worked in this industry for 30 plus years, there is no way I would step into retirement without some kind of plan to increase your income over time. It's going to be a disaster if you do.
So let's talk a little bit about overconfidence as far as it relates to consumer confidence. You know, that's something we look at on a regular basis, because that it tells us where we're going in the future as the economy progresses. So this is Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Survey. It attempts to measure consumers' current feelings about business and employment conditions, as well as their expectations for the next 6 months. So where do they think things are going on an ongoing basis in the future? And consumer spending is really responsible for about 70%, which is a pretty high number, guys, of U.S. economic activity. So it's something that we want to continue to keep an eye on. And from what we're seeing right now, that's a strong number because, again, we're seeing the overborrowing and overspending, which is, again, it's coming from overconfidence. They wouldn't be overborrowing and overspending if they were not overconfident.
And I think, we have a great affinity for Brian Westbury, a chief economist with First Trust out of Chicago. He is probably one of the smartest people that I know about the economy. He talks about a Goldilocks economy. You don't want it too hot, but you don't want it too cold. You want it just right. And confidence is one of those things that can get overheated. That actually causes people to do stupid things with their money because they feel emboldened because things are so good. And that's about the time that you're going to see things really begin to pull back. It is really interesting how moderation comes into play in this situation.
One of the areas where you see this in terms of a business is in wage growth. So, how does a business demonstrate overconfidence? Well, to give people raises, that is a good and just and right thing to do, but at what pace do you do that? Right. And what percentage of a raise and what frequency do you do it? When you begin to see businesses give significant raises in a shorter period of time, then they're pretty confident about the future. Well, what happens if that doesn't pan out? What happens if, like in 2020 when COVID hit, things didn't pan out like everybody thought that they would, and so you saw some of those businesses, frankly, go out of business, and some of them have to cut back pretty significantly. So it's pretty easy to see from a business perspective, there's a place where you've got to find some balance. You've got to take care of your people, but you don't need to have so much confidence that you're overspending in that arena. But then you bring that down to the personal level. That guy who's getting paid more by the business, then what does he start doing? Well, he starts spending more because he's getting paid more. And it is this trickle-down effect, to use a Reagan deal. It starts with the business level, but then it's going to impact on a personal level what the rest of these overs look like.
It wasn't that long ago we were talking about businesses stockpiling record amounts of cash, right,
yeah.
on the sidelines. And that was really built out of fear in a lot of cases because of the fear of the unknown. But it is also positioning them, I think, to be able to increase wages when they need to, or spend on infrastructure or invest. So again, I think from the lesson for a personal economy is some of that still needs to be there, right? You don't need to overstockpile and be fearful, but you also don't need to let go of all of that cash because of overconfidence that everything is moving in the right direction and is always going to continue to do that. John, you're pretty famous on this show for saying things are never as bad or as good as they seem to be.
Yeah, and I think that really is where this lands in terms of investing, because one of the classic things that you see is when the market is going up, everybody thinks that the market's just going to keep going up. And so I'm going to put money in the market when it's going up. Well, let's think about this. Is that really the right time to put money in the market? Maybe it is, maybe it's not, because oftentimes when things are low, when you think about when we had the downturn with COVID-19 and the market fell 30-something%, everybody was like, I don't need to put any money in the market because it's going the wrong way. Well, if you take a look at the reviews that we're doing with clients now, that we are
stupid
good.
Yeah, stupid good. Yes,
stupid good returns, because if you take it from point to point, from let's say the end of March to the end of March of 21, the returns are like 50-60% in some cases. Now, that's very, very unusual. It wasn't anything that we did necessarily. That was just how the market performed during that one time period. But isn't it interesting that people didn't have confidence in the stock market back in March of 2000, and now 2020, and now they've got a lot of confidence in the stock market when it's a lot higher? that may be just the opposite of what you may be needing to do.
You think about that, and I've even talked about this in the reviews with the clients. The reason we do the 12-month trailing is because we're having an annual review, right? So the concept is, it's been 12 months since we've seen you. Let's see how we're doing in those last 12 months.
Right.
But you do have to remember what happened before. That was a couple of months before that, right? The market did go down. So it's about the long term when it comes to investing. And I think the reverse is true, too, for some people. Some people got scared and jumped off on the way down in March. But some people did say, hey, this is a great time to buy. And I know some people that got some individual stocks, right, in that time. Their 50 or 60 may have been 130, right, over the last 12 months. And that's great, but do you have some overconfidence now, right? Because, hey, this thing is easy. I buy an individual stock, and it goes up 120%, right?
Yeah, it's all about timing in terms of individual stocks in most cases like that.
Yeah, well, and that's a losing proposition in most cases.
It is. We've talked many times about timing the market versus time in the market, and all of these scenarios we're talking about are timing the market. And I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your area of expertise is. If you're playing the game of timing the market, you are going to lose more times than you win. It is more about time in the market than timing the market.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that I'm going for here is that it can. That is the overconfidence.
Yeah.
Is I know how to do this, right? I made a lot of money over the last 12 months. I know how to do this, but over the long term, and that's where we hang out every day with the planning, is long-term investing. It's very difficult to keep that up.
Well, and you see people deal with this from a standpoint of, seeing somebody else do it, and their confidence is emboldened because they saw somebody else do it. We saw this with the whole deal with Reddit and GameStop and all that. Oh, they did that? I'm going to go do that. They jump in and go to do that. And the bloom's off the rose. It's already happened, and they're buying in at some high level, and then the stock turns around and goes back down, and they lose. And then what happens? They lose confidence in the game because it didn't work out for them like it did the guy that they were talking to, or the guy that they were observing with that lightning strike of luck that happened there. But the key here is to not base what you're doing on luck or overconfidence or anything. The key here is to base what you're doing on a plan and a strategy. A plan and a strategy last throughout time. It lasts. It happens well when things are good. It works well when things are not so good. Planning is the key to your financial success.
I would challenge you to ask yourself if you're overconfident about your personal retirement. Do you know that you're on track and you're right about that? How do you know? Are you confident that you're going to be able to retire and replace that paycheck throughout your entire retirement time period? And there's a way for you to find out if you're on track for retirement. All you need to do is text us the word checkup and get access to our 15-minute retirement program. All you have to do is text checkup to 501-381-5228 if you want to know whether your overconfidence is, hampering you, or if you're on track for retirement.
That's a way that you can have confidence,
yes.
Not overconfidence.
That's right.
But confidence about what's going on, because the assumptions that you make in a financial plan, Scott, are a lot more calm and staid than some of the speculation that might be out there that could produce overconfidence.
It goes back to what we always talk about, the difference in rate of return and outcome. You're thinking,
Yes.
you're looking at that rate of return thinking, oh, look what I did over the last 12 months, but it's about the long-term outcome. And that's a successful retirement in almost every case with the clients that we work with. We're going to take a break and be back for our final segment right after this.
The beauty of a potter's work is that each item is unique. No piece is the same. That's what makes it art. At GenWealth, we believe your financial plan should be unique to you. Through our process, your money is carefully shaped around your goals and dreams. Your future, artfully crafted. Call us today or visit our website and connect with us. GenWealth Financial Advisors.
I don't think it's any coincidence that the Bible says, fear not, 365 times, one for every day of the year. At GenWealth, one of our standards is that we do not fear. We don't fear market downturns because we know that they're going to happen. We just simply plan for those things to happen and work around them. It's one of the things that we believe very earnestly, that you should never fear what you don't understand. You simply find a way to understand it and find a way to use it to your advantage. It's one of the Genwealth standards.
Want more straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Listen to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
Our final segment on today's show, and we've been talking about the 3 financial mistakes that you need to cancel from your culture. These things are a problem in the overall culture, the macro economy, if you will, and they can't leak into your personal economy, or they can have disastrous results when it comes to your financial goals. So if you're just joining us, we've been talking about 3 overs. It's over borrowing, overspending, and overconfidence. Those can really wreck your financial future, and we've played out those things. But as we finish up today, what's the antidote to that? What's the solution? We've already kind of hinted at it in the last segment, but it is about the plan. So what's the plan? The plan is on paper, on purpose, written out so you can see it, and it is outcome-based. It is education-driven, strategy-based, and team-delivered. It's not about chasing high rate of returns. It's about a long-term approach to investing and a long-term approach in retirement to providing you a consistent, predictable monthly income that, oh, by the way, is going to have raises built in, because I think we've highlighted pretty well in today's show the need for inflationary-adjusted raises. And if we didn't, just hang on, because in the next couple of years we're going to see that as prices continue to go up. But so what is the plan? And the plan for us and our clients is the Ready to Retire process.
Yeah, and I think that I would say that it begins with a mindset of not get rich quick or not try to chase the hot thing that's out there, but to have a more steady, staid methodology of what you're doing. The headlines really do highlight and tout people that hit something big, hit the big lottery or whatever the case may be. But it is that slow and steady, getting rich slowly, that I think you can really document that way more people are successful at that strategy than they are playing the lottery or hitting the hot stock or whatever the case may be. And Janet, that really begins even before you sit down with a financial advisor. You really have to say, okay, I'm going to step away from luck and I'm going to step more into strategy.
Well, in the last segment we talked about timing the market versus time in the market. This is a good place to be thinking about that when you're talking about accumulating assets. If you're contributing to your 401k and you're getting that match with every pay period that you have some money coming out of your paycheck and some money coming from your employer as a match going into that investment. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it's 2008 and the market is down 40%. It doesn't matter if it's March of 2020 and the market is down 30-something%. It doesn't matter if it's March of 2021 and the last year looks amazing. It doesn't matter. You just keep investing. Now, you do want to have some coaching on where to invest within your 401k, but here's the key. Accumulation is relatively easy. Just keep investing, and you'll get somewhere down the road. You'll get to a better place in the future over time because you continue to contribute. The question is, what happens with distribution? And are you prepared? Do you have guys that plan on paper, on purpose, the Ready to Retire process, so that you know how you're taking a distribution to replace your paycheck?
It has to be more than just investment, Scott. It really does have to be a lot more than just investments to get you through retirement. I've seen people with lots of money retire, and their retirement really didn't work out very well because they were basing everything on what kind of performance can I get, and performance is not consistent.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I'm asked this question in the meeting room quite frequently, is what have you saved all this money for? What is the purpose of those investments? And almost across the board, it is retirement. We're building this as a nest egg to support ourselves when we leave work and we need a paycheck. Well, how do you know if it's enough? It's not a magic number. I think a lot of people ask that question when they come in too. How much do I need to retire? The first question. That's the first question they ask. Well, we don't know anything about you at that point, so there's no way we can answer that question. Your asset level can determine how much income you can get in retirement. But I think this also, it highlights the importance. You talked about accumulation, moving from accumulation into distribution. That really needs to be put on paper on purpose before it actually occurs, right? The retirement red zone, something we talk about quite frequently. If you're 10 years or less from retirement, it is the perfect time to actually see that picture of the future, your income stream. Whenever you're going to retire, if it's 60, 65, we can sit down with you and begin to build that plan that shows you your monthly income beginning in year one of retirement and how it grows with inflationary adjusted raises over time. And if that's your target income, if that's what you want, and your asset level is going to come up a little bit short of the runway, that's a perfect time to be able to do something about it.
Scott, I sat with some clients just this week that we've been working with him for 2 years, and he's got about another year to go in retirement. We sat down and began to work through some of the complexities of his retirement program. Now, he's got several things going on, and there's a lot of moving parts to this, but it is so good to have that runway of time to be able to prepare for certain things. I visited with another client, completely different situation, that we had actually planned for him to retire in about 2.5 years, but he came in and he went, I'm done. I really want to throttle back. I really want to be able to step out of what I'm doing right now and just have a different paradigm, make a little bit less money and be able to glide into retirement as opposed to just stop in 2 years. I'd like to begin to throttle back. We took his plan. We began to work through that, and we figured out that, yes, he could have a hybrid retirement. He could have what we like to call work-tirement here at GenWealth. It is simply a way for him to do some part-time work and live on some income that he has coming in and be able to trigger that retirement 2.5 years earlier than we thought possible. And so it doesn't work out that way all the time, but to have that time and have that span of runway, if you will, to run up toward that ultimate retirement goal makes all the difference.
Guys, I have the great privilege in this quarter to work with somebody who's been my client for 18 years and is now at the point of retirement.
Oh, wow.
We don't
How about that?
We don't normally have that long of a timeline from, day one to the point of retirement, but I'll tell you, they're ready. They're more than ready because they've had that period of time to go, okay, what does this look like, and how much do we need to save now, and what are the opportunities we need to look at over almost 2 decades, really, to get ready for retirement.
I don't have any idea who you're talking about, but I will be willing to wager that their confidence level is very high because they've had so long and been working consistently on a plan to get there.
They haven't seen the final plan yet, but yes, that's where they will be when it's all like, okay, now we're there, and here's your numbers, and here's what you've got to look at.
Scott, I think that's in contrast to what most people have to deal with. Yeah. I think about retirement as you've been on this journey, you've been building up and accumulating money and all of that type of thing. But now you are about to have to walk through the deep, dark woods, and it's foggy and it's dark, and you don't have a flashlight and you don't have a map. But you have to go through. You can't turn around and go back. You have to go through because retirement is coming. It is something that you've got to deal with. And so to have that flashlight and that map and that guide to take you through, I think that gives you the confidence to take the steps that you need to take to get into retirement. And the only way you do that is you pick up the phone, give us a call, and let us put together a retirement income plan. We call it the Ready to Retire process because that's what we're doing. We're getting you ready to retire. And it is I think it makes all the difference in the world in not only the financial substance of what you're doing in retirement, but also the feeling that you have about your money.
Let me give you that number. It's 501-653-7355. Again, it's 501-653-7355. You can call it now. You can also send us an email, info@getreadyforthefuture.com, to begin the Ready to Retire process, especially if you're 10 years or less away from potentially entering retirement and life without a paycheck. Do want to take a real quick minute to talk as we talk about this theme today of 3 financial mistakes to cancel from your culture: overborrowing, overspending, overconfidence. If you're younger, I think about some people I know that are actually in their 30s, and I don't know a lot about their personal economy, where they're overborrowing, overspending, overconfident, but I have had a conversation enough to know that they're not saving for retirement, and they're in their 30s, and they need to begin that. And I'm probably willing to say that it's because of some overborrowing, overspending, or overconfidence. You've got to get in touch with your future self and begin a plan working towards accumulation for your retirement goals. Well, there is the bell. It is time for our final thoughts. I'm going to start at the end of the table with Janet.
So we've talked about, over everything. The question is, what's your personalized plan? Where are you in terms of your retirement planning? Do you have on paper, on purpose, a plan to prepare you for retirement and show you what that path is going to look like? If you need to know where you are, all you need to do is give us a call, 501-653-7355.
And Scott, I would say to the people that you were referencing, or really anybody else who's out there that is accumulating money, and you're dealing with this balancing act of life and money, and you're dealing with kids, and you're dealing with parents that are getting older, and you may need to help them, and you've got a house mortgage, and you've got some debt, and you really want to try to achieve some goals, a plan is the way that you do that. You can sit down with your advisor at Gen Wealth and customize a plan to you and help you to actually realize the goals that you are just sitting there dreaming about. Right now, you don't need to dream. You need to take action. And taking action younger is so much better than taking action later.
I will have as my final thought a reminder again about the way to check if you're on track for a successful retirement. We talk about the Ready to Retire process, and that is the full written plan. But you can kind of get that bird's eye view. If you don't have a lot of time right now you want to dedicate to it, in the time it takes to check your social media, you can actually do a 15-minute retirement checkup and see where you stand. And you can text the word text the word checkup to get your free checkup. Just text the word checkup to 501-381-5228. 501-381-5228. Text the word checkup or go to 15minuteretirement.com. That's 15minuteretirement.com for your free checkup to see where you are. Fun show today.
Absolutely.
Don't
Good
forget
to be
about
back in the same room.
Yes, it was very much so. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next week.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 501-653-7355. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.